Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way is in Training. This is a podcast exploring how warriors should train and fight, as well as how they should live. We will talk about technique, but we'll also dive deep into fitness, mindset, and strategy. We will explore leadership and philosophy as well. So whether you are a young soldier, a veteran police officer, a responsible armed citizen, or simply someone looking for an authentic life, let's examine how the lessons of combat and preparation for it can help us fulfill our potential. Let's explore the way together and learn how the discipline of training can show us our true selves amidst the chaos of life.
Hey everybody, welcome back. On this episode, I once again have my good friend Karl Rehn of KR Training. Karl's been involved in the shooting and training communities, both competitive and tactical and defensive, for a very long time. Not to make that come across the wrong way. He's well experienced and seasoned.
I'm old now.
I was trying to avoid putting it that way. But it kind of goes into what I think we're going to talk about today, which is what we discussed talking about was kind of the history of firearms training, what he's seen as having hosted, national instructors for as long as he has, and kind of the trends and things he's seen change and things he's seen stay the same. So does that sound about right about what you wanted to talk about today, Karl?
Yeah, I have an interesting perspective on the training industry and the history of it. And I'm just going to kind of free form flow kind of things that I've observed. And probably the thing I should give you is my background and why my opinion might have any value at all. Is that okay? Want me to jump in?
Yeah, no, please do. Please do.
All right. So I am a private sector person, which means that there are other people out there that will quote how many thousands of hours of training that they've had. Without exception, all of those other people acquired that training institutionally. Their employer paid for them to go to gun school. It was a condition of employment. It was part of their job. I'm one of the rare people. I have over 3,000 hours of formal training that I've attended. I actually quit counting a couple of years ago when I crossed the 3,000 mark. Given year, mainly because I have a range and I host classes, which allows me to attend a lot of classes. I get somewhere between 40 and 100 hours a year of training that I take from other people. And I've been doing that since the mid 1990s. So certainly a full 30 years of that volume of training annually. That's in addition to teaching. So I spend a ton of time on the range. Last year, I was on the range over 150 days teaching other people or talking to people about guns on conferences and that sort of thing. And so I see a lot of people I've trained, and I try to have variety. So I've trained with at least 100 names. If I look at my list of classes I've taken and people I've studied with from distances, time limits, anywhere from 4 hours to 5 days in a block, there's probably 100 different names on there of people that have been in and around the training business for during my lifetime. So I have a lot of perspective. There are still people out there I haven't trained with yet, right? So there's plenty of people out there, and sadly there's people I wish I had trained with who are no longer with us, who made huge contributions. And if I say anything to people that are young or just getting started in the training business, there's a tendency in the modern era to be wrapped up in the now and who is the coolest guy right now and who has the best Instagram video and who can be the most controversial online. And I will say this, there are at least 5 top tier trainers who have 50 plus years experience who are still out there teaching, who are all likely to be no longer teaching in the next 5 years. And that's just because of age and health and everything else that goes along with getting old. And so if you're prioritizing your training, it shouldn't be who is the coolest guy I saw on the internet or who do all my friends think is the coolest guy. You're going later, if you stay with this training stuff long enough, you will regret not training with some of the old dudes because you may not think they know what they're doing. You're like, oh, they're out of date. They don't do this. They don't have this kind of gun. They don't They can't do this certain high-speed thing that they probably could do 30 years ago, but they don't have a video from last week with them doing it. So what do they know, right? That don't underestimate the old guys that have lots of wisdom, and you will regret at some point not training with them if you miss out on it. So I would say in particular, any of these trainers that are 70 or older, you should make training with them your most important thing. These other people will be around next year, 5 years, 10 years. If they're any good and they're committed to it, they'll be around and they'll come around again. So that's, probably my strongest advice to students of training and people who care about training. And even if it's, you say, well, I don't want to learn that. I don't care about this. I don't want to learn about snub nose revolvers. I don't want to learn whatever, shotgun, right? You should learn that, because everything will come back around. Every 15 years or so, there's a cycle, and the cycle repeats, and what was not trendy becomes trendy again. And so, again, think beyond the 1 year or the 6-month cycle and what might be immediately relevant, because some of these guys, when they're gone, they're gone. And I'm not sure that in some cases there'll be someone coming up behind them that has the same level of expertise. There'll be new people with new fields of expertise, but when those guys are gone, all you're going to be able to do is get third hand photocopies as opposed to direct from the source.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to pop in real quick, because there's a couple things that you made me think about here. One is your model of the classes you teach, which I really like, because I come from a martial arts background, right? And I always looked at shooting as a martial art.
Yeah.
And you've got it set up where you have your home range, and your classes for your students are very much like a martial arts curriculum. It's very much like going to a jiu-jitsu dojo and having the curriculum for achieving certain ranks and having certain skills. And it's more, not that you don't have a competition influence. I mean, you were an OG USPSA competitor back in the 90s. So, I mean, you've got that. But your focus is on practical use of the gun, which I think people lose sight of sometimes. And the other thing about martial arts culture, which ties into what you just said, that I really wish people understood better. And I think part of it is a byproduct of youth, because I competed as a martial artist when I was young, and I was arrogant about things in much the same way then too. If somebody wasn't a national competitor, I was like, well, what does that guy know? When I was, 19 and 20, but I was wrong. And the culture in general in martial arts is to kind of revere the senior people that have this knowledge, even if physically they're not as capable anymore. They've still got that wealth of experience and knowledge. And I wish people valued that more, because I think that's really important. And to wrap it all back around to what you were saying, we've lost several big names just in this year alone. I mean, we've lost Super Dave, we've lost John Holshan,
John Benner, Marty Hayes.
Yep. Yeah. And like you and I were talking before we actually started the podcast about how I had students recently that didn't know who Jeff Cooper was. And I'm not saying we don't need innovation. I'm not saying we don't need to improve and refine the way we do things, both training wise and technically. Of course we do. But we're where we are because of the people who came before us. And if you're serious about pursuing something, you should understand where it's coming from and the history of it. And there are still things to learn from people. Like a good example is, I've got a lot of friends that are really good with revolvers. I'm not really a revolver person at heart, right?
Me neither.
But they have a certain place that's very valuable for defensive use. And you should know, if you're a student of firearms, you should know how to run a revolver competently. You don't have to be Jerry Michalik or, Caleb Giddings, but you should be able to run one at a competent level. If you're a shooter, you should just know how to. You should be well-rounded enough. Shotguns,
well, from
like
a gun rights perspective, the worst case scenario from a gun rights perspective is if we get one party government where the party in control is anti-gun, the other countries in the world have eliminated all semi-auto firearms. And in the worst case scenario, when we're down to bolt action rifles and pump shotguns and revolvers, it might be good to own one of each, and it might be good to be, competent with each. And while that's a doomer outlook, as Tom Gibbons likes to say, what happens to paranoid people? Nothing. Nothing happens to paranoid people. So sometimes it's good to be a little paranoid, and not to mention can be fun to go and learn how to run a lever action rifle and a pump shotgun and a double action revolver, and add that to your vocabulary of things I can do. And wow, this is harder. And oh wow, now I realize why maybe people didn't shoot as good in the 1970s as they do now, is because the equipment makes sense, and you appreciate the value of the new equipment. Right? There's value in all this stuff. You do have to get kind of the initial, I got to train with all the cool guys and I got to go fast and do all the stuff, and get all that out of your system, I think, before you get to the point you can appreciate some of the other aspects of the art of the study of these things. And so I get it. When I was 20, all I wanted to do was go fast. All I wanted to do was go shoot major matches and look cool and get sponsored. And, that was all of my focus. And it took 5, 8, maybe 10 years to get that kind of out of my system, where I said, and once I had my own range, was like, I got to pay some bills. And there's a whole lot more people that have a handgun for self-defense than are willing to spend 50,000 rounds a year and make their life all about this stuff. And those people need protection. Those people need skills. And so that's how I got where I got. So I know who the young shooters that are eager to just go fast and look up to nobody but the go fast guys. Been there, done that. I know those people. I'm just trying to pass down the good advice. Eventually, that those people that are in the go fast zone, eventually they'll remember what I said, like I remember said to me in the past, and eventually began to embrace it. So I'm just planting seeds for later, planting seeds that might grow to something later.
So, and like the thing there too is that there's nothing wrong with wanting to increase your skill. Like, more skill is never a limiting factor, right?
Yeah,
but there's also
training.
Yeah, but there's also, what's your level of participation? Like, not everybody who carries a firearm for self-defense needs to be a master class or grandmaster class shooter. That's just it's not necessary. And I think, like, on the martial arts side of things, we've proven that with MMA. You don't need to have a black belt in any one particular art to be a good MMA fighter. But what you do need to do is be well-rounded, right? And I think the same holds true for defending yourself. You need to be well-rounded. And yes, you need to be able to shoot fast and accurately. Absolutely. And more skill at that part of it is never a problem. Having more skill is never a bad thing. But there's also other things to it that I think people start to neglect when they become so singularly focused on that one aspect of it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the late John Holshin, John Holshin's passing really, really tore me up, because literally the day that I got the news that he had passed, he was supposed to be on a plane the next day to come to my range to teach a class that weekend. And so mine was the class that didn't happen. And, his class, that material that he's been teaching or was teaching, was all about teaching people to make decisions after the first shot is fired, which is the next generation, the next boundary of useful work that new trainers need to explore. What John was doing, and what John Hearn is doing, and John Murphy and the Cognitive Conclave. There's people that are working that direction, and they're doing all the right things. They need to keep doing it. John's thing was, okay, you can memorize a course of fire, a bill drill, right? But the problem with the bill drill is, after 2 or 3 shots, it's not a stationary target anymore, and the situation may have changed. And just reflexively practicing to always shoot every time you draw, not realistic, and planning on dumping 6 rounds as fast as you can go. It's like, okay, we can do that. That's a cool thing to do, but that's not the right answer in all situations. And John's material was, he used the neuro with the laser overlays, and you'd start shooting in it after shot number 3 or 4, the gun symbol would go away from the target. And if you weren't looking more than the A zone of the target and admiring your work as you see the whole 7 yards. If you didn't notice that target to your left now was the threat and the target in front of you was not, then you were still shooting the targets you shouldn't be shooting, not shooting the targets you should be shooting, because we're programmed, right? And so there's all this stuff. We can do all kinds of wonderful program a pattern in, and it's like learning to play somebody else's guitar solo. You can rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it till you can play it in your sleep, but that doesn't mean you can own great guitar solo, right? It's a different skill. So
Yep.
that's my mind. That's the future where training is going. We should probably wind back to like the original topic, because I'll easily be led down the rabbit holes. I'm great for that.
No, you and me both. I always enjoy the rabbit holes. So how is training different now from when you first started hosting and attending? How has it evolved?
Really, I don't think it's changed that much. It's back in the day. Greg Hamilton and John Holshin ran a school called Insights up in Seattle, and in the 90s, I think they were highly innovative because they were doing what nobody had done before. So I guess let me run the clock back. Historically, let's say 1940 to 1990, gun classes were some variation of, let me stand here in front of one target, I'm going to blow a whistle, draw your gun and shoot. Everybody shoots, stop shooting, go forward, score the targets. Here's the standards. Did you pass? Did you not? Go faster, shoot smaller groups. That hasn't changed. That sort of training is still everywhere. And 99% of the classes I run and 99% of the classes I teach, that's what it looks like. Classic square range. Why? Because that's a great way to put a lot of people on the line, coach a lot of people, give them a lot of trigger time, give them the repetitions and the practice they need. There's nothing wrong with square range training. Often the guys teaching those courses were specialists. They were pistol specialists. They were not diverse. The trend in the 90s was, and the really the two biggest schools, although I would say there's probably 3 or 4 that worth discussing, maybe 5. The two that really popped up on my radar in the 90s, Greg Hamilton and John Holshin, were more diverse. Rifle, pistol, shotgun, knife, unarmed, medical, legal, pistol, close quarters, integration of firearms with gun and knife. They were very open about their mission, and this is our program, and they had an entire spectrum of courses that linked everything together. And prior to the decade of the 90s, you just didn't see that. And there's only a handful of people now that are out there. That there are people that specialize in close quarter 0 to 5 yards, but and those guys mostly come from martial arts background, and they're good at drawing the gun and shooting the 5 to 7 yard problem. But those same people are not offering classes in 25 yard, group shooting or whatever. Whereas first Hamilton Holshin, but then also John Benner at Tactical Defense Institute, who never got the attention that he deserved, but really was absolutely every bit as innovative. John also had a program, basically because he was a cop, that was more like an integrated police program that had for citizens, that had everything from shoot houses to grappling to, unarmed control techniques to rifle, pistol, shotgun. Tiger McKee had, 3-gun. He was a 3-gun instructor. And there's, Kelly McCann and Phil Messina, and there's a bunch of people who were around in that era that were all trying to do some form of integration. And the focus on integrating skills was a thing right up until 9/11. And then everything changed back, basically. That it changed back to, we've got to get our gun skills up. We're going to war. We're learning. We're not worried about pepper spray and unarmed control and grappling on the street corner. It's all CQB, rifles, right, and handgun stuff. And it was what was needed for the time. I'm not saying it's wrong, but that was the change. The evolution has just been, where did people come from? And, my secondary topic that we maybe get back to is more in-depth discussion of all those trainers pre 9/11, post gun sight, pre 9/11 trainers. There's a dozen of them who were super influential and important, and nobody knows who they are because they were pre-internet, or at best web page grade internet, and not living online, constantly posting videos like the current proper trainers do in order to stay constantly online. There wasn't that opportunity. So that's a different topic for another day. But that was a change. That was a change.
I had all of Kelly McCann's VHS tapes back in the day. I had Kelly McCann's and Jerry Barnhart's and all of that stuff back in the late 90s.
Those are the names. Those are some of the names. Yeah. God bless him, the Lenny McGill library, right? Before we had Panteo Productions, we had Lenny McGill. And Lenny put out a lot of content, and pre-internet, pre-YouTube, post Gun Magazine, the video store, the Blockbuster era, right? They were the Blockbuster trainers. You'd go down to Blockbuster and rent whatever, USPSA Championship 1995, Lenny McGill, and watch it. If you were in Texas and your gun stores had that kind of videos, mine did. But, there was the video era, the VHS era, America Online, that sort of thing. And there was an era there where things happened. But really, aside from equipment, nothing has really changed from the 20s, the 1920s to the 2020s in terms of what we do. The equipment looks different. Some of the techniques look different. Some of them have come around again, right? We go around in circles, and bend your elbows, don't bend your elbows. Oh, bend both elbows, don't push your arms out all the way, right? It's like, okay, we've gone through all that. But pressing the trigger and hitting the target, nothing's changed in 100 years. So we just tell ourselves how to do it different ways. Now the biggest innovations happening now is all equipment. We've got the Mantis and the Coolfire and the Ace and 80 bazillion different dry fire toys, and those are wonderful. And I'm all for innovation, right? The Grip Keeper laser gun and the SIRT pistol, and there's those that are motivated to get better. It's easier to get better now. Now we don't go out in our back pasture and shoot tin cans in the stock tank. We can put on our Ace headset. We can grab our SIRT pistol in our urban apartment or mom's basement or whatever, and all of that has changed. The how we train has changed, but is it really different than Jelly Bryce dry firing in front of a mirror in 1930? No, not really. It's the same idea. It's shooting without shooting. It's the human brain only works certain ways, and we're only going to learn things by doing certain things. So really the part of this that when I proposed this topic, if I can divert it down the original rabbit hole, was really more advice maybe to instructors or students of instructors, to say, I've seen a lot of people run classes, and there's a lot of interesting little nuances that instructors do or get into, and you'll recognize them when you see them, right? And things that I try not to do, only because I've seen other people do them, and I don't see them producing good results, or I see them causing problems with class flow. And so maybe it's more of an instructor advice to other trainers, or just things to look for. And this will probably hurt some feelings. I'm not going to name anybody's names, because for every example I've probably got 8 people I could name. Oh, I saw all of these people do this thing, and oh, I used to do this thing too, right?
I got to admit, I'm kind of curious to see how many of them I do or have done.
Oh, pain. Yeah, there's Chuck Pressburg in the no fail class a couple of weekends ago. He's like, well, you just got to hold up the mirror, and you have to look at what you see, and be honest with yourself. So yeah, I'm not saying that any of these things make anybody a bad instructor. These are just little things that I notice. And so do you have any, before I'm going to let you start, if you have any like that, you say, well, if instructor does this thing, I don't like it, or I don't think it helps, I don't think it's useful. You got to have
I
something.
will talk about a weakness of mine as an instructor.
Oh,
I'll do that.
easy.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Okay.
So because I don't want this to come across the wrong way. This is not meant to say that I'm the smartest guy in
Right.
the world or the most intellectual, right? But I tend to kind of wax philosophic, right? I tend to be kind of a deep thinker. Doesn't mean I'm always the smartest guy, but it means I tend to think that way. It's a style of thinking,
Right.
rather than a skill, right? I can easily let myself be led down into avenues that are probably best kept as sidebars for lunchtime or after class. That is one of my
Yes.
weaknesses. Somebody can ask me a question, and before I know it, I've spent 10 minutes on something that wasn't in the curriculum, and I have to steer myself back to what I'm doing because time is finite.
That is every good instructor, because as I explained to one, I said, you do not have to put everything you know into one class. I said, you have to think marketing to a certain degree. You say, well, I have all this other stuff. There's one instructor that I like a lot, and he's a wonderful person, and he has wonderful curriculum, and he has a 20-hour course, which I have recommended to him more than once, should be a 14 to 16-hour course, and the last 6 hours of day 2 should be cut and put into an add-on separate 6 to 8, or maybe expanded to a 16-hour course on that topic. Because I will start with the 20-hour people that think that a training day needs to be 10 to 12 hours. I think people are working too hard for the money at that point. That when you get done on the range at 5 o'clock and the last 2 hours, people are exhausted and hungry, and I've got 2 more hours of lecture content. No, you don't. No, you shouldn't, right? Stick that in a different box and say, come back for level 2, level 3. Tom Givens is really good at that, at understanding, like his instructor training material. He's like, okay, the first batch, I got 24 hours of material. Okay, I got another scoop of 16 hours of material. And he looked at everything he knew and everything he wanted to pass down. He goes, well, but wait, there's more, right? And he continued each course in the program. He's got 4 courses now, that go through all of his curriculum. I believe the total is 8 or 9 days of material if you take all of it. And you should, because the 3rd and 4th levels are the really interesting down the rabbit hole stuff that you don't get in the level 1 class. You're not going to get it in NRA instructor. You're not going to get it in USCCA instructor. You're not going to get it in Rangemaster 3-day, because there's all this other stuff that's more important. But if we don't pass down that other stuff down the rabbit hole, well, then you're leaving stuff behind if you suddenly find yourself not teaching. But also, that stuff it's good, but you got to sort it, right? You got to think, okay, what level of student am I teaching? What are the learning objectives? What do I have to accomplish? And how much time can their brains and butts stand? And to a certain extent, some of these things all wrap up together. Instructors are typically, type A, AAA, I have a problem type instructors, who their idea of a good day is 12 hours on the range. You eat an apple and you're back on the range, and you don't drink enough fluids, and you just go until you pass out from exhaustion. That is not the same motivation level that all of your other students have. And you, as particularly as younger trainers, people that are in their 30s and 40s, they're like, I'm ready to go. I got my testosterone shot. I got my energy drink. I got 18 doses of nicotine in my body, and I'm ready to go. And you've got people that are older than that have kids and lives that, hey, I gave you 2 days, but I have to get to work in the morning, and I need to get to sleep, and I got a dog to feed. And so a certain degree, I think just me personally, as a consumer of training and someone with an active life outside of training, it hasn't been my obsessive focus in life for at least a decade or more now, where I've got other things going on. 16 hours is plenty. That guys that are, I want to make sure they get the value for the money. Give them 16 really good hours with some take home and some homework, and something I like a lot that John Murphy did. I'll praise him for something innovative. He took a lot of his lecture material and he put it into videos. You sign up for a John Murphy class, and he's like, here's all the stuff we're going to do in person that you need me there present to do. Here is all the PowerPoint stuff and the video analysis. Said you can watch that at home, and you get this additional material as part of the course, but you can watch that and you can watch it over and over again. You can watch it in 15-minute chunks. I really think that's brilliant, and shame on me for not doing the same kind of thing. But I think, was a very innovative move that he made that maximizes the value of the in-person time.
And that is smart. That is really smart.
Yes. Yeah. John has just a couple of courses that he teaches, but they are well structured with regards to use of student time. And I think that's the magic. Is sometimes people that they get into full time and you ask, well, what's the last class, as a trainer, if they ask you, what's the last class you took, who did you take it from and why? And often the answer is, well, somebody else who thinks just like me. And I took a class from somebody that does everything the way I do. And I did that. And it's hard to step outside that and say, no, I went and took a class from somebody that, is totally different from what I do, right? The next class is going to be with Vicki Farnham, drawing out of a purse and a fanny pack. It's an off-body carry instructor training course that she's offering. And I don't carry that way, but I did a deep carry class with Rhett Neumeier, and I don't carry that way. I don't wear an Enigma and gym shorts, but I have had students that need to do that, particularly armed teachers and like football coaches that are carrying a gun at school, that they wear coach's shorts. And for them, the deep carry where the gun is completely down below the pants, and they need to know his techniques, and he can't be everywhere. So, I paid him for training to learn how to teach other people how to do that. So just because, it's not in your zone from stuff that you think is anything you're ever going to use, I think it's good to learn those things. I like to learn those things that I'm not good at, even if it means I'm not going to make Instagram videos showing, here's my deep carry 1 second draw. I don't have that, but I can show you how Rhett does it. I can show you how I figured out how to do it, and now I can help you how to do it. So that's, as a professional development side with trainers, I think that's an important thing. The other thing is it puts you back in the role of being where you're all thumbs. Right? Everything, it's not easy. If you're the best shooter in the class, well, stuff's coming easy for you. That means you don't know how to help the strugglers. You need to be a struggler. You go do something you suck at, to go be a struggler and reacquaint yourself with what those people in your classes are feeling like. And I think that happens sometimes in some of these classes that I'll give you another just observation. I don't run a fancy gun or a gun that gives me a particular advantage if I'm shooting demos in front of students. I've trained with a number of instructors who feel compelled to shoot an excessive number of demos. We're going to shoot this drill. Okay, let me show you how I can shoot this drill at the maximum speed possible. Okay, we'll put on your martial arts hat. If you're watching somebody do everything super fast, are you seeing any detail? Are you seeing what they're doing? Or you just see a blur of hands and feet? Wow, that was really cool. Yeah, you're great. I already paid you for the class. I know that you're great. I don't need to be reminded that you're great. And with the gun world, it's like, well, you've got the 5-inch gun in the open carry holster with the ginormous dot window. Okay, here's the gun I brought to class. Can you shoot the drill to your standards using my equipment? Right? And if you can't, then why are you pushing me to be able to do the same thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's an easy trap to fall into. And I think sometimes it comes from, I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this, right? So it's,
well, you want to look good in front of your students. I get it.
Yeah, well, that's part of it, but it's also like you want to give them what they paid for, in a sense, but that's not really what they paid for.
No, what they paid for
what I mean?
is you helping them get better.
They paid for instruction, right? They paid for coaching.
They don't care about your performance. They
they
care.
paid for your coaching, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
they want coaching. They want to see improvement. I went to a very famous 5-day school that has a very famous, highly complex shooting test. Aficionados of training probably have already figured out where I want to gone. And on the first day, I asked one of the assistant instructors there, I said, so it's a 5-day class. We shoot 2,500 rounds and we shoot the test for score on Monday and we shoot it over and over again during the week. And at the end of the course, I said, what for 125 round test, said, what level of improvement does the typical student see? And the number I got was 5 to 10 plates, 5 to 10%, which is really, it was 5 to 10 out of 125. So that's less than 10%. So 2,500 rounds of focused coaching, working the drills in the curriculum, that's the middle of the pack. In reality, the people at the top were seeing far smaller numbers. What I saw during my time there and what I've observed with others is if you go do the homework before you go to that school, then you come in and maybe you pick up 3 to 5 more plates by virtue of shooting every day, on thinking about it and working on it for 5 days. But if you're down at the low level, I saw some of the friends I went with, they struggled, and they should have seen, in my opinion, 20% improvement at the bottom, but they didn't. And I'm not sure, that's my sympathy is always with the strugglers. My sympathy is always with those at the back of the pack who need, their lives depend on getting better, right? If you're an M and you want to get the GM, that's not going to make a significant difference other than on match day. If you're a D class shooter and you need to be a B class shooter when you're in the Walmart parking lot, you need to be 20% better. My opinion, just my philosophy of teaching, that I need to help you. I need to, if it means I have to loan you equipment, if it means we need to give you a different gun, we need to, do something different. Those people are the ones. And often I see an attitude that at the top, the people that are the market, the money in this industry, let me go back. The money in this industry is all earned from, as Tom Gibbons said, the same 10,000 people nationally who are gun hobbyists and training junkies who take lots of classes, who work really hard at this, and they all shoot, probably B class level or higher. And they all aspire to being better, which is great. But often we don't grow our ranks when somebody that is a struggler shows up in a class where they're over their head, they're just not going to make it. And the instructor's teaching 24 people by him or herself, and there's no provision for what if somebody, and they're just, well, I guess they just, they should sit down and go home. Well, that's not, I'm not good with that. I'm not, as the fat kid in gym, that was the struggler at the back of the pack. I'm like, well, that, I'm not good with that. My personality is not good with that. And so, I know everybody can't bring multiple AIs on the road with them. Some instructors are better or worse about that. And I've seen 24-person classes where the lead instructor brought 2 AIs or had 2 people that were experienced students that were called up to say, hey, come intern with me. And I think that's valuable for a bunch of reasons. I'm a big fan of having other instructors or interns that are learning, because that's really, when you're working for a top instructor and you assist others on their watch, I think that's super important for instructors and how they get better. Because if you only teach in your own bubble, then you think, well, everybody's like this, right? Everybody needs to drop 30 F-bombs in the first 30 minutes of class, which I've had a couple of guest instructors do. Not a fan, but I don't bother criticizing people for that. Other than I'll point out that at one point I had one instructor that did that, and within 2 hours I had a very devout religious couple that paid for the training said, give us our money back, we're leaving, because of the prevalence of inability to get through a sentence without an F-bomb. And the guys that are bad at it have this attitude like, well, that's just the way I am. Well, if you were talking to your grandmother you probably wouldn't talk like that. And if you can, put a sock in it when you need to, why don't you try to need to when you're teaching? Why do you feel obligated to talk like that if you know you can't, right? If you're talking to a 5-year-old, you're talking to your kid's school, you're hopefully not talking like that. So you can control it, you just don't want to, right? And there's levels
reading
of
the room, right?
No, it's a presentation thing. There are people that feel like that they need to talk a certain way because it goes with their self-image of, well, I was this or I was that. And there's a certain, sometimes we get into a mode of playing a replica of ourselves, playing the character. I am the trainer. When I am the trainer character, I have to be a certain way, right? And you may not be that way off stage. As a guy that performs music and performs in front of people, there's a stage persona and there's a private persona. Stand-up comedians are legendary for that. For Emo Phillips or Sam Kinison or whoever, off stage is one way, and on stage they're like, wow, that's totally. If you listen to like Cat Williams, when he's not on stage, the way that he talks in interviews is nothing like when he's on stage, right? And I think trainers to a certain degree do that too, some more than others, and that's okay. It can be really entertaining, but that's just my pet peeve. And I'm sure that millions of your listeners will, I'm going to talk however I effing want to talk. All right. That great. Good for you. You do you. You do you. As Michael Jordan said, Republicans buy shoes too. And if your goal is only to teach 30-year-old young men in battle belts that, wearing camo or whatever, and if that's the market you want, then great. You're going to get that market. If you're me and you're trying to help strugglers and less motivated gun people come to class, then you don't need to have political rants, and you don't need to have certain, you want to communicate yourself in a different way, to present yourself in a different way to those people, because you're not going to reach them with that other persona. And so that's just generically, some instructors do that kind of stuff a lot. Other instructors are completely genuine all the time, and they talk the way they talk, and they are the way they are, and they don't even think about modifying their behavior for in class and out of class, and maybe some of them should. Just saying.
So I got a couple follow-on thoughts for you, questions, thoughts, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
One is being an instructor in the classical sense versus being a coach in classes.
Right.
So I think that kind of ties into part of what you're talking about. And then the other follow on there, well, let's do that one first. And I'll come back around to the other one. What do you think about kind of the instructor versus coach thing? Like, I always, not that I succeed, but my goal is to try to be a good coach instead of someone who just calls out drills and runs a timer.
Your approach is similar to a lot of, and it has to do with the way courses are structured. And there are trainers that limit the size of their classes, knowing full well that it will reduce the profitability of their training, so that they build in one-on-one time with every student. I'm a fan of that. I would rather take a 12-person class where there's everybody all together on the line, and there's some me shooting by myself with the instructor watching, this, that, let me spend 5 minutes with you. You can't make it everybody one at a time. And that becomes a huge downtime. That's the flip side. That's the downtime problem. That's another problem instructors get into. And it's the challenge to balance that. But yeah, I like 10 to 12 person classes way better than I like 24 people on the line with one instructor. Shoot some more, shoot faster, stop missing, shoot better, dump. If we got to shoot 1,000 rounds today. There are people that love
God.
that. And the guys,
I got to tell you a funny story.
Make a ton of money. And if I was smart, my career is a long history of making the wrong decision at every branch along the road, where I could make a lot of money if I did that. but oh no, this is the way I think it should be done. So I'm going to do this over here and make a third of the money and be a third less, a third of the famous, right? But I don't know, no regrets. I'm happy with the decisions I made, and I'm comfortable with it. And there are, I just tell my students, so you just understand what you're getting into. And if it's 24 people all on the line together, then there's certain things you're going to get lots of trigger time. You're going to get lots of reps. But if you're making a mistake, nobody may catch it. And there may not be anybody there to explain to you what you're doing wrong, because if you get 1/24th of your instructor's time, then that's not very much, right? They look at you once, they go, oh, okay, that's all right. They're not great, but they're not terrible. So I'm just going to say good enough and drive on, right? There's a nuance to that.
I had a stint when I was with Chicago PD where I was teaching recruits firearms, and we had one of the older trainers who used to just like yell at the recruits trigger control when they would be throwing shots low left.
Right.
And I looked at him one day in the break room. I'm not going to say his name because I liked the guy, but this was a weakness of his as an instructor. I looked at him one day and I said, you realize that they don't even know what you mean. You've never explained what you're saying to them. You yelling trigger control to them doesn't help them because they don't understand what they're doing wrong. He wouldn't walk down and look at what they were actually doing with the gun. He would just yell out trigger control because their shots weren't in the center of the target, which for a more experienced shooter might not be a bad coaching cue. It might not be. But for someone who doesn't even understand what
right once to understand the difference. And and for many people, I have discovered that students do not understand the word slow. If I tell them to press the trigger more slowly, they go like this. They go press, 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 press. Right? I say press, and I have to explain it. The Eskimos have 17 different words for snow, right? Shooters need to have at least 17 different ways to explain how to manipulate a trigger, because I've heard very good instructors explain it many different ways and teach it different ways, physically, with models, with props. I use SIRT pistols. There's a lot of different ways, and people learn differently. And so that's part of the thing, is you have to have enough flexibility in your curriculum that you can say, look, okay, you 5 people, you need to get to the front of the line. You need to pay attention, because I'm going to explain this a different way, and we're going to take a minute and sort this out before we keep going. The other thing that I see that, well, let me hit a couple more, because I know we're already, I have no idea where we are on time, and I know I've rattled on too much already. I promised you one of my other pet peeves is going too long. We were talking about the fact that I will not listen to podcasts that are 3 hours long. I don't care what kind of advice or whatever's in there. It's like, oh my God, just give me your best 30 minutes and drive on and save the rest for the next episode. And so we're not doing a 3-hour episode today. I promise. I'm really big on brevity. You need to no more than an hour without a break. People need to rest their minds. You need to limit the number of topics that you cover so they can focus on what they're doing. Don't try to do 6 things at once, all those things that happen. You just need to be able to explain stuff enough different ways until people get it. And often what happens in some of these larger classes is people fall behind and they can't catch up because the instructor didn't take a minute. I'm going to praise someone that I've watched teach a lot, and that's Tom Gibbons. And I have seen Tom, his lesson plans are, I run my lesson plans like his. At least I think I do, because he won't probably admit this, but I've studied and watched him so much that I feel like I understand what he does. He has a lesson plan. He has a sequence of things, and the students need to accomplish X, Y, and Z. And he watches the line to make sure that everybody is basically on track with the curriculum and no one's falling too far behind. If he sees people struggling, he will back up and run additional drills on a particular thing to try to help them get caught up, right? To get to the point where they can move on. Because at some point, the errors begin to stack up. If you can't do A, and the next drill requires doing A and B, well, you can't do A. So, then if you have to do A, B, and C, and you still can't do A, then it becomes a problem. Some instructors are so dogmatic. It's like, no, we're going to run exactly 5 reps of this drill. Then I'm going to demonstrate it for you at maximum speed. And I'm not going to show you at slower speed. And I'm not going to talk about what might go wrong and how you can fix it. I'm just going to show you how good I am at it. And then we'll go ahead to the next thing. And we're going to shoot that exactly this many times. I've got this program of instruction, and you're going to shoot 632 rounds today, right? Before we finish, no matter what time it is, no matter how tired you are, no matter how hot it is, right? And no matter how you're doing. And you might need 400 rounds to get to that point where that I want you to get to, right? And it's a personality type, and I get it. And the pushback I get when I've mentioned this to others, like, but everybody's got to get exactly the same curriculum. No, they don't. No, they don't. Everybody's going to get better.
No.
And yes, you have learning objectives.
There's a desired end state, right? But not everybody takes the same amount of effort to get to that end state. Some people need more than others, and some people need a slightly different route to get there.
And for outdoor ranges, weather conditions play a role, right? Fatigue plays a role. That sometimes ending class at 5 and letting people go get a good dinner and a good night's sleep, as opposed to running it until 7, and then we're going to start again at 0800 the next morning, right? And everybody's dead, and their performance is not good. When if you said, hey, 5 o'clock, go have a good dinner, right? Get a shower, get some sleep, spend 30 minutes in the morning dry firing in your hotel room before you come to the range, and we'll start at 9 instead of 8. It's like, but we can't cover this lesson plan. Here's something I tell my instructors that work for me and in my own discussions and stuff. We do what we call 80% lesson plans. And I see some instructors do this and some instructors don't, right? That I have enough material that if everything goes perfect, that'll fill a 4-hour block. That's my 100% goal. Well, usually we try to get the 80% goal done in the 4-hour block, because there's always delays. It's hot, equipment, whatever. We have to go back. We have to circle back and fix problems. There's always something. That the last 20% ends up being the bonus material that if you get a class with people that are all getting it, you say, is everybody feeling good? We're still good? Okay. We're at 3.5 hours. Hey, I got 5 more drills we can run, and we're going to finish out this material. But I don't consider the class a failure if I don't get to that last 20%. The passing was I got 80% of the curriculum covered, and I have that bonus material in my pocket when things are going good. And I think some instructors, they only think in terms of this is the block of stuff, and the only way to get there is we're going to do this many reps and this many reps. And often I find myself having been influenced by others that teach this way, that sometimes it's 10 reps. Sometimes it's let's back up and break this skill into pieces, and we're going to do 10 reps of half a skill, or we're going to take the time limit off, or we're going to triple the time limit and force you to use all of the extra time. Like with demos, I'm weird. I have my assistants, when we shoot demos in front of students, our goal is to use all of the time, whatever the par time is. It's, I don't know, let's say it's a bill drill. And in beginning level students, it's a 6-second bill drill. You think, oh my God, that's forever, right? I can do it 2 seconds. Yeah, you can. I want my assistants to be able to step on the line and shoot a 6-second bill drill, not by shooting it fast and then waiting and firing the last shot 4 seconds later. Stretch it out proportionally. Does that make sense? If you can shoot a 2-second drill,
yeah.
Can you shoot it at 1/3 speed so that all your body movements and everything you're doing is proportionally correct? It looks like a video that's been slowed down by a factor of 3. Can you do that? And often I'll talk while I'm doing that, and I'll say, okay, I got the slack out, press, slack, press, slack, press, right? While I'm drawing, I have time to say, okay, I grip the gun, join your hands, find the dot, all that. And you can narrate the thing at 1/3 speed. What I want students to see is this is what it looks like to do it in the time that I'm giving you, right? If we're doing a 4-second bill drill, then they need to see what a 4-second bill drill looks and sounds like, not what a 2-second bill drill looks and sounds like, right? You need to set the goal for them, not look how wonderful I am. This is the standard I want you to achieve. I see very few trainers who shoot demos for their students taking that approach. What they do instead is, let me show you how awesome I am, but that doesn't give them any kind of useful value. They're just standing there going, great, when can we shoot?
And I would argue that sort of mental transmission is a hallmark of true mastery, right? Being able to shift gears in your head and shoot at a particular pace. It's a lot harder. And I'm not saying that a 2-second bill drill isn't a good benchmark. It is.
Yeah.
But a lot of people that can shoot a 2-second bill drill, and a lot of the people can't do that and hit it on the nose, right? They might be able to like do some sort of version of a slower one, but it's not going to be a predetermined pace that they've set. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I actually learned that in my early days. Chip McCormick. I trained with Chip in the late 80s and early 90s. And we were not at the same level of skill at that time. We were training for the Steel Challenge. And his game with me, which was the great leveler, which was step up to the line, it's roundabout. Tell me what time you're going to shoot roundabout in. And you had to shoot roundabout each run in roundabout. Let's say back in the day, I was 3.5 seconds for roundabout, right? And so, okay, I needed to shoot it in 3.5. And he would say, okay, I'm going to shoot a 275. I'm going to shoot a 2.5, right? And understanding the time management in your head, understanding what you can do, and the goal was to be able to do that on demand, to have the assumption, of course, that you're not missing. Extra shots ruin everything, but clean run, okay, I need to be able to do this in this much time. And that was how I learned to get faster doing that. Okay, I can do it 3.5. Okay, well, now just chop 1/10 of a second off of each piece of it, right? Okay, that's how you get 3.5 to 3. And but it's
I like that a lot.
If you're doing all the right things at a slow speed, then if you're doing all the right things, then all you have to do is start shaving the sections off and learning how to do all those things a little bit quicker, seeing a little bit faster, not making mistakes as you increase your speed. But it was interesting because that was how we would compete against each other in training, was that sort of disciplined approach, and I would have my time goals and he would have his time goals. And the winner or loser was determined on who had the mental discipline to shoot to their own standard without mistakes.
I like
because
that a lot.
It was extremely useful, and nobody I've ever trained with since imposed that sort of discipline. But I tell my students, right, it's 10 times out of 10, there's 2 standards to train to. One is I'm pushing to try to get faster, which I'm going to make mistakes and screw up. But it's the 10 out of 10, you don't own the skill until you can do it 10 times in a row. So it's not that I've got a 1-second draw once, it's that can I do 10 1.5-second draws? Okay, if I can do 10 1.5-second draws cold when I get out of the car, that's my draw speed. It's not 1, right? It's 1.5. There's nothing wrong with 1.5 because I know, by God, if I need a 1.5-second draw, I have it. It's not, 5 1.2 draws with an A zone hit and 5 D shoot the dirt, miss my draw, miss my grip, fumble my whatever. Well, okay, if it's a Walmart parking lot and that means you got a 50% chance of getting it done, well, those are crappy odds, I think.
So,
right?
I agree with you completely, and that's another rabbit hole that we probably don't have time for, because I really want to get to my last question for you, because I thought about it a few minutes ago, and I think it really kind of factors into this.
Okay.
And I'm not talking bad about any instructors, because I see how this can be done, how it can happen, and it's something I've had to fight against myself, right? But I think it's not the optimal way to schedule, to organize, to template a class. And that's training for the test. Like, we've all got our challenge drills and our challenge patches, right? In the tactical shooting world, I've got my own. You've gotten it. And I think there's a real temptation as an instructor to train to the test, to do nothing but practice up for the test so they're ready to hopefully pass the test at the end of the second day, right?
Oh, so I'll defend that. I'll defend that right now. I'll say, no. If your test is good, then breaking down the skills that you need to to perform well on the test. And I've been in a bunch of classes that do that. And there's great value from that. And I do that.
Okay.
Right. That a lot of my 4-hour classes have a test you have to pass to continue to the next 4-hour block. Right. And so it's okay. Here are the goals. The next 4 hours, you're going to be able to, let's say my level 1 defensive pistol course. It's a 4-hour class. And the goal is at the end of it, from open carry, they need to be able to draw in 2 seconds from open carry. They need to be able to shoot 3 shots a second at 3 yards. Right? Some basic stuff. And that is the course. The definition of the course is, let me show you how to do those things. Let's practice those things. And then we will validate that you can do those things with the test. So
that's the key, right? It's the focus of the class. That's the key. Yeah. So
you have a learning objective, and you say, okay, here's how to do it. We're going to practice. You're going to get better at it. Hopefully we give you an excess of skills so that when we get to the, if I can get you shooting 4 shots a second, and then the test, you shoot 3 shots a second, that's great. And I have no problem with that, because that means that your evaluation metric that you're using is relevant to the curriculum that you just taught. And there is nothing wrong with that, as long as everything fits together, right? That the test
and see, I think that's where the dichotomy is happening for me. I think because, like my 2 flagship classes, right? One is the applications and one is the skill development. And the concept of the skill development is to teach people how to train themselves. So I don't want it to just be my 2 challenge drills, because I want to give them like the framework for their own teaching and their own training. So for that class, I wouldn't want it to be just work the 345 over and over again. But then the flip side is like Gabe White, who's a phenomenal instructor. A lot of his class is based around his test, but his test is very relevant to the material of his class, and it's a very applicable test. It's very high level. It's a very good benchmark of defensive shooting.
Gabe's program, Chuck Pressburg's material, some of my stuff. Tom Gibbons does it in his instructor classes. I'm trying to think who else I would go into this. That approach works great. In all of those cases, they are breaking down, okay, we've got to draw the gun quickly. Let's work on drawing. And there's a deep dive, like in Gabe's case, or Tom Gibbons is working on concealment draw, and Tom teaching his instructor class. Like, here's how you teach people how to draw from concealment. Here are the things you got to pay attention to. Okay, now we're going to go out and work on that. And you take the thing, you break it down into little pieces, and you get better at all the little pieces. And you work, okay, I got the gun in my hand, I'm going to push it out, break the shot, all of that. And I would say even Jedi in his red dot class, that took his red dot instructor class, that was broken down into start with the gun already in your hands, ready to target, learn to find the dot, even the last 20% of the draw. Let's work the last 20% of the draw. The gun's already out there. Okay, found the dot. Found the dot, right? Breaking things down into little pieces, and you work on it, and then you start rebuilding all the building blocks. And I think that's a perfectly good approach. There's nothing wrong with that. Holshin did that with the neuro course. So I could start with one target. Let's get you used to looking at the image. Okay, stimulus response. Okay, now we're going to add another thing. We're going to add another thing. I think all of that there's nothing wrong with any of that. And here's the plus. If you structure your curriculum like that, then you have taught them how to train themselves, right? Because here's how I trained you. You do this drill, you do this drill, you do this drill, you do all the pieces, break it down into little pieces, work on this part. And then like your 3-4-5 test, it has a bunch of skills embedded in it. It's like the fast coin. It's got a bunch of skills embedded in it. Okay, well, with the fast coin, you can just draw and shoot 2 headshots. You can just work on that. You can draw and you can just shoot the 4 body shots. You can just work on drawing and shooting the headshot. You can work on doing the reload and making the first shot after the reload. You can break down all those little 6-round drill. You can break into probably 15 different sub drills, fixing problems, and then finally you have all the pieces put back together. Now you can shoot the test. If you don't do that, you're not going to be good at the test anyway. And at some point, to learn all those composite skills, you've got to put it all together.
But then there's the flip side. and I'm not going to mention the name of the training course, even though I figured it out from your description. There's the classes like that where basically you just shoot the test over and over again. I guess that's more what I was talking about, where you're not breaking down the building blocks so much. It's just practicing the actual test, like the way a lot of like recruit training is done in the police department and things like that. Like
there's more.
You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I've only been out there once, and I know people have been out there a dozen times. They do break it down. They do sub pieces, but there's a critical point where there are some people that aren't getting it, and when they keep cranking up the speed and they're not getting it, then that's where the failure comes in. The advice I got,
or like
been out there a lot, is the problem is everybody wants to start with a second class, that they have a level 1 class that hardly anybody ever wants to take because nobody wants to say, oh, I'm at that level. And apparently that's the course, the introductory course to their program has the stuff that I think they should be teaching. And I've been told, well, if the strugglers would come to that first instead of trying to jump into the intermediate advanced,
that makes sense.
They would. And I haven't seen that other curriculum, so I can't say, but I do believe them when I've been told that that's the issue. Is, it's the problem with training. Everybody wants the advanced whatever. Everybody wants the level 5 class. They want the fast roping from the helicopters with the, they want that, and not everybody's ready for that, even though everybody thinks they are. And so that's some of that. That's student problems and not teacher problems.
Yeah, no, definitely. But then like another example is, and I'm not going to say who this guy is either, but it's somebody I've known for a long time who has a strong special operations background. And rather than have like a simple, fairly comprehensive, but relatively simple test like Gabe has, or like the 345 or like the fast coin, it still covers a lot of the elements you need, but is relatively easy to administer.
Right.
He's got a full-on qualification course that is more complex than anything I did in either the military or law enforcement.
Right.
So his 2-day class gets eaten up. Pretty much the entire second day is trying to get people through this test. And I just don't think that's necessarily the best approach.
See, that I would go back to, that's a marketing thing. That is a 5-day course. And it should be broken up to say, okay, we're going to do part 1, right? That there's actually, as an instructor, would say, leaving money on the table, say, okay, at the end of 40 hours of training, you should be able to do all of these things. And so level 1 class with me, we're going to work through the first part of it and then come back for level 2. And then level 3 is a 2-day class where we really dig in and we're going to try to put the whole thing together. And I think that would be wonderful. But there's only so much.
Absolutely.
There's only so much improvement people can make. There's only so many things they can accomplish, and that's where you have to have realistic perspectives, again, based on attention span and ability to function and their endurance level. High performance people, they don't understand somebody getting worn out mentally and physically in 4 hours. But that's an average person. That's where they're doing it. I mean, one of the bands I play in, we regularly play 4-hour shows, and with short breaks. These guys are monsters, just die hard. They get on stage and they want to go. 1.5-hour set. It's just song. Okay, 10-minute break. We'll be right back. Our fans love us. We have great crowds. Some of the other bands I work, like, I can't believe that you do that. We do 20-minute breaks and we play hour sets, and we play a lot less notes and a lot less everything. And like, okay, that's fine, but learning to do that, learning to play 2 hours with no break, it makes you stronger and you get used to it. Now I don't think about it. It's like, oh, that particular band, we did a 7-hour show one time for a wedding party that did not want to stop. They kept giving us extra money to play more, and we literally played 7 hours of music for those people. And finally we told them we're exhausted, and they were still, they would have stayed, I think, if we had been able to go on. But not everybody has the same endurance and motivation level. And often the people at the top, they think, well, this is not a big stretch. Well, yeah, you spent the last 30 years of your life getting in shape and shooting 200,000 rounds, and all that stuff is easy for you. And you lose perspective of what the student view of all that stuff is like. So let me,
there's a mental,
go ahead.
There's a mental fatigue too when a skill is newer to you. Like it's hard to remember when you've been doing a particular skill for a long time, the mental effort it takes when you're new at it. When you're learning something new, there's a cognitive load you don't have once it becomes an automatic skill.
Correct. Well, I just look at how do the top shooters train. The top shooters that I've known, most of them don't go to the range for 8 hours with no break, right? Again, going back to Chip McCormick, Chip would, when he was getting ready for Steel Challenge, he would go to the range 6 days a week. He would get up in the morning, he would go to the range, he would shoot the entire Steel Challenge match cold for a score. He would go have lunch. He maybe sometimes would go home. Then he would come back in the afternoon and he would shoot the entire Steel Challenge match again cold, and then work on stuff that he wanted to get better at. But there was breaks, right? There are guys, full-time guys would, go to the gym. They make sure they're getting their sleep, right? It's a full package of training. It's not, I just have to go to the range and shoot 1,000 rounds every day, right? A real training regimen is more than just kill yourself with quantity, because at some point,
yes,
you're investing your time in the wrong things, or you're no longer, you're just burning up money and not seeing improvement. And so it's got
the repetitions have to be mindful. Yeah. The repetitions have to be mindful too, right? Like it's not just sheer volume, it's how much you're putting into quality of repetition, not just the quantity.
Right. I had to make a significant change around 2015, 2016 in my approach when I really wanted to try to get better from where I was. And it changed how often I went to the range and how much time I spent in dry practice, and how I put a lot more effort into very, very structured practice on very, very tiny things. I'm just going to work 7-yard reloads until I get it to the speed that I want it. I'm just going to work 7-yard draw until I get it where I want it. Just going to work on this one thing, and really microanalyze, every fraction of a second to peel the onion back. And that's something you can't do in a training class. That really is, you have to, at some point, to break through a certain level, it's got to be work you put in yourself. And no amount of training classes, I tell students sometimes, they're like, well, I shoot a lot of matches. Well, that's like taking a lot of tests. So what if you took every other weekend that you were going to shoot a match, and you planned out a practice session, went to the range and shot 100 rounds in 2 hours that worked on stuff that was measurable, that you tried to improve on things, as opposed to, I get up at 7 a.m, I drive to the range, we set up these overly complex stages, I wait in line with 80 other people, and I shoot 125 rounds, and then I'm home at 5 o'clock at night, and I'm sunburned and I'm tired, and I didn't get better, because you're taking the test without doing the homework. And a lot of people are like, but I love to shoot matches. Great, love to shoot matches. Don't expect to get better. That's not how you get better. And so, shooting matches is not training. Taking classes teaches you what you should do when you do your homework, right? It's getting a coach to help you give you homework. But then if you're not doing the homework, and sometimes it simply taking the class motivates you to do the homework. I got fussed at one time on the internet because, like, well, you're doing all this practicing before you go to class. Shouldn't you wait and just shoot the class cold and let the instructor coach you? Like, no, I'm wasting my time then. Let me get as good as I can get. Then I'll get the instructor to coach me on the things that I didn't, right, that I need help with. But if I don't put the work in myself, then I'm not getting the value out of their training. This whole idea that I should not touch my, and then every 6 months go take a 2-day class from somebody, and then, I haven't touched my gun in 6 months. That's what you're here for. No, you should have, the weekend before class, you should have put on your gun. You should have dry fired. You should have practiced to try to at least get back to where you were at the end of the last class before you come to another class. Otherwise, all we're doing is just driving the same road over and over again. You're not getting better.
When you really,
same path.
When you really get right down to it, training is what you do on your own.
Correct.
You take the lessons you learn from the instructors, but it's not like being an Olympic athlete where you have a full-time coach, right? That's not what shooting is. Even at the top levels, that's not what shooting is. Nobody has a full-time coach unless you're in the AM. Yeah, unless you're in the AMU, and even then I'd argue you still don't really,
No.
It's what you do on your own that matters. And on that note, my friend, you told me to keep you to an hour and I failed. We are well past an hour.
I know. I'm going to close with my one thing. The internet marketing one. I have to get this in. I have to preserve it somewhere.
Okay, let's get it in. Yep, let's get it in.
It has to do with things that instructors do, patterns I've noticed with instructors. And the number one, you can write this down, engrave it in stone. This is the fundamental rule of firearms instructor internet marketing. And the sales pitch goes like, the life experience, skills, and abilities that I have, the credentials that I have, are essential. Those that I lack are not only unimportant, but they're detrimental. And it doesn't matter what background the person comes from, the tendency is there. You will see that attitude express itself. If it's a competition guy, if you're a competition guy and you're talking about cops and military, well, you haven't won the world championship. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. No, they haven't. But that they have other experience that's valuable. Same thing, cops, they're police instructors. There are a handful of law enforcement derived instructors that are like, well, if you haven't pointed a gun at somebody in a uniform, if you haven't ridden the hard streets and done the thing, then you shouldn't be teaching anything because you don't know anything, right? And I would say there's a statement, but at the same token, there's context, right? And often I see people that come from different backgrounds, competition guys trying to teach concealed carry, a guy that's running a Shield Plus from an inside the waist holster, and the person that's teaching is running a comp scoped heavy dust cover titanium neutronium whatever gun that's got a 2.5 pound trigger. And it's the difference in equipment, right? If everyone in class is working from concealment and you're wearing a battle belt and a staccato and or you're wearing a retention holster or whatever, I think it's appropriate to try to use the gear that your student base is going to use. And particularly instructors that are teaching private citizens, I think they should make a bigger effort to not train in open carry battle belt type stuff that you should model. You should be able to demonstrate stuff using the kind of equipment. You want to impress me as an instructor, then show up with a M&P single stack shield and be able to run the drills. Okay, this is the standard. If I can do this with this gun, you can do this with your gun. That's more impressive. I'd not have taken it to that extreme. I tend to run like a 4-inch barrel gun. That's my actual carry gun, and that's what I use for demo purposes. But that's kind of my last pet peeve with instructors is like, well, I've got all this fancy gear, and that buys me 20% performance, and so, but I'm going to push you to do that stuff with gear that isn't probably well suited for it. So I think that's a thing. That's a thing, and I see that a lot.
No, that's definitely a thing. So, all right, so before we wrap it up, my friend, let everybody know how to get a hold of you, how to schedule training, all that good stuff.
krtraining.com is the easiest. I am working on my 2026 schedule. It will come out in a couple of weeks. I don't travel very much anymore. I have play in multiple bands. I teach classes at home. I've gone back to work again for TEACS, which is doing Homeland Security courses around the country. So I'm now traveling for them like I used to do when I was full-time. And so I travel a little bit. I'm going to New Orleans in January for a Force instructor and an advanced handgun course. And I have lots of classes going on at home. And TACCON in March 26th, I'll be there. And I'm also on the NRA Education and Training Committee now. So that's another thing that is eating up some of my time, trying to help the NRA get things back on track with the new leadership and all that. NRA brought in me and several other civilian trainers, private sector trainers that work with gateway students and entry-level students, trying to get better input. I think from us, we're doing our best, try to move things in good direction. But yeah, krtraining.com, blog.krtraining.com is also where I write when I write. I don't write as much as I used to. I need to write more. I have a backlog of probably 30 articles that need to get finished. So maybe over the fall, when I'm not so busy, I will get more writing stuff done again. That honestly,
and your book. Can people find your book? Can people find that
Books
on Amazon?
On
your website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, strategies and standards for defensive pistol training. You can get on Amazon. You can get it off the website, And I just ordered some more print copies to sign for sale. And we'll see. I just talked to somebody yesterday about doing a revision to our free drills ebook to double and make a deluxe edition of it that'll go on Amazon as a cheap, but something you could purchase ebook. So hoping maybe by Christmas we'll have that out as just kind of a bonus extra, just a bunch of drills, including historical drills from previous decades and some discussion there, which will be a way to finally get some of the historical handgun material that I have out and into the world, since I've made terrible progress on finishing that book. It's been languishing for quite some time.
Well, I have a copy of your book that is published, and I like it a lot. It's a very good resource. People should definitely check it out. I also happen to have one of your.
Go ahead.
I also happen to have one of your coins, and that's something else people, if they live in Texas and can come to your range, should definitely try to take your classes and get that curriculum in, because it's valuable. I really like your model of how everything builds on itself, and it's an approach that I wish was more logistically possible in the firearms world, kind of that dojo approach, because I think people learn well with that kind of training. So if anybody can do it, they should.
That was what happened in the 90s. Was all of us, me and Marty Hayes, John Benner, Hamilton Holshin, Tiger McKee, quite a few others, we built facilities. And our idea was to be more like local versions of Gunsight, where local students would come to us on a regular basis. And the internet killed all of that. You don't see any of the current new generation of trainers that are moving out there. They all want to be suitcase warriors. Let me get on a plane on Thursday, land Thursday night, set up on Friday, teach Saturday, Sunday, fly home Monday with a suitcase full of $20 bills, right? And they're more wanting to travel the country, but there's fewer and fewer trainers that are committing to be just a local resource, be your local golf pro, and do what I do. And honestly, it's money. There's more money to be made teaching that 10,000 small group of super highly dedicated people than doing what I do, which is making your money, $125 at a time, 4 hours at a time, offering shorter classes to a broader audience at the local level. But I would say for the future of gun rights and for the benefit of more gun owners, I would say that's what, we don't need more masterclass shooters. We need more carry permit holders that can shoot IDPA sharpshooter scores on a test. We need those people to be better. And that's just not economically popular and doesn't make you cool on the internet, so nobody wants to do it. But like I said, I'm going to keep doing what I do.
I would argue that being cool on the internet doesn't necessarily make you cool in real life either, but that's a whole separate topic. All right. Well, I've enjoyed the conversation as always. We have at least 2 more we got to do after this one, because we talked about a few other things we need to talk about.
Yeah.
So we need to schedule those. Everybody out there, I hope all you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. And please do all the things that you have to do for the algorithm to know I even exist. Click like, subscribe, leave a comment, all of that stuff. It really does help out. And I will talk to everybody again soon.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Way is in Training. Please come back again as we explore how training makes us better at our craft and better in our everyday lives. See all of you soon.